This is the first year that I've had fruit off this grapefruit tree. Now, unlike citrus in warmer climates, which would be a nice golden yellow, these grapefruit began to colour up in spring, but didn't get really much further than this one. And now as it has advanced through to midsummer, they have started to revert and become more green again. They are sweeter than they were in spring. They were still a bit tart, which is why I left them. And now they are sweeter, but the colour looks wrong. It looks like you shouldn't be picking them, but they're just fine. So there's something to remember, citrus in cooler climates, that they will do this if you leave them. They will go back to green. Oranges will do this also. Now these grapefruit are fantastic, enjoyed as juice or fresh. But there's one thing that I like to do with grapefruit when I have the opportunity, and that's to make some marmalade. I really like grapefruit marmalade. Now what's different about the marmalade that I make is that I make it without using any cane sugar. While I'm using grapefruit for this process, you could make this marmalade with any citrus of your choice. Simply give them a wash first. I like to cut the stem end out, as it wouldn't be that pleasant to strike in your marmalade. Cut them in half, and you want to remove the seeds. It's not always easy to get all the seeds out. They can be a bit of a challenge to find them all. You'll miss some, but it won't matter too much if there's a few, but try and get most of them out. Like I was saying, you could make it with lemons, oranges, or a mix, pretty much your choice. Now, into the food processor I put both the chopper blade and a slicer. That way I can cut it up fairly fine. You always got to watch with these food processors, they like to spit it back out at you, but it's a much faster process than cutting it up by hand, and not as messy either. Give it a whiz until it's actually cut up sufficiently. Make sure it's the way you want it. Now I add juice rather than water. I find that it gives better flavour. Water simply waters the flavour down and reduces your keeping qualities, but adding fresh juice is a much better way to do it. You don't need a huge amount though, simply enough to make it liquid so that it's not going to burn when you start to heat it up. Weigh it first and put it on, start cooking it. Now to sweeten it I use xylitol. This looks like white sugar, but it isn't. It's xylitol. And the xylitol I use at a rate of 1/3 of the weight of the rest of the product. I find that ratio works well for making marmalades and also jams with other fruits. So that's 3 parts fruit, 1 part xylitol. Cook it up for around about half an hour, give it a taste, and if it's not at the sweetness you like, simply add a little more xylitol. Now I simply scald the jars that I'm going to use with boiling water to sterilise them. To thicken it, I use a little agar. I use the rate of 1 teaspoon per kilo of the total weight, so that's xylitol plus fruit. I mix that with a little bit of water to swell it up before adding it to the pot. Agar is made from seaweed and will thicken it up nicely for you. So stir that in, and you'll need to keep it bubbling for another 5 minutes or so before you actually put it in the jars, as agar needs the heat to activate it. After around 45 minutes to an hour of cooking, it should have the right taste and smell and texture and be ready to go in the jars. I always put it in the jars really hot so that it seals and draws a really strong vacuum. The xylitol actually aids the keeping qualities as it inhibits yeast formation. So it's ready to enjoy on a slice of bread the next day when it's cooled down. You'll notice that the consistency is pretty good. So now I need some consumer opinion.
Do you like it, Samuel?
Mm-hmm.